What's up, history buffs, and welcome to Historical Repo. All right, today we are digging into one of the biggest mysteries of all time. What really happened to the legendary Library of Alexandria? So, was the greatest library in the world really destroyed in a single fiery apocalypse? Or was it more like a 700-year-long crime scene? You've probably heard the story, one big fire and poof, all the knowledge of the ancient world gone forever. Well, I'm here to tell you that's pretty much a myth. The real story is way more complicated, and honestly, it's even more tragic. So let's start the investigation. Okay, first things first, we have to get our heads around what this place actually was. Because when we say Library of Alexandria, you're probably picturing a big building filled with dusty scrolls, right? But it was so much more than that. Think of it as the ancient world's internet. It's Google and its top university all rolled into one. It was the beating heart of human knowledge. See, the library itself was just one part of this huge campus called the Museum, which literally means Temple of the Muses. This place was massive. It had lecture halls, observatories, medical facilities, botanical gardens, the whole shebang. It was less like a library and more like a combination of MIT, the Smithsonian, and a Silicon Valley think tank, all founded way back in the 3rd century BCE. And the mission statement? Oh, it was just, to collect a copy of every single book in the entire world. No big deal. They brought in the greatest minds of the era, scientists, philosophers, poets, you name it. And the government paid them just to think, to research, to debate, and to invent. Can you imagine? This is where absolute giants walk the halls. Take Eratosthenes, for example. This guy right here in Alexandria was the first person to calculate the circumference of the Earth. And get this, he did it with insane accuracy, using nothing more than sticks, shadows, and some seriously big brain math. It's just incredible. And if that doesn't blow your mind, how about this? The very first steam engine was invented here. It was called the Aeolip Pile, created by Heron of Alexandria. Now, the crazy part is, they mostly thought of it as a cool little toy, a party trick. It would be almost 2,000 years before the Industrial Revolution came along and rediscovered the power they were literally playing with. The innovation didn't stop there. In medicine, they were doing things that were totally taboo elsewhere. Scholars like Herophilus of Chalcedon performed the first recorded human dissections, which was a huge deal. They mapped the nervous system, figured out the difference between arteries and veins. I mean, this was revolutionary stuff that laid the groundwork for modern medicine. The knowledge coming out of this place was literally changing the world. Okay, so if this place was so unbelievably important, this beacon of human intellect, where did it go? How does something like that just vanish? Well, this is where our cold case investigation really begins. Let's line up the suspects. All right, suspect number 1. He's the big one, the name everyone knows and blames, Julius Caesar. He's the guy in every textbook, the prime suspect for the murder of the library. But did he really do it? So here's the story. In 48 BCE, Caesar is in a tight spot during his war in Alexandria. He sets fire to the enemy's fleet in the harbor, but the fire spreads. The Roman philosopher Seneca later wrote that 40,000 books went up in smoke. And yeah, that is a devastating loss. But here's the crucial detail everyone misses. Those scrolls were probably in warehouses down by the docks, not necessarily in the Great Library itself. And now for Exhibit A, the evidence that casts some serious doubt on Caesar's guilt. A few decades after this fire, Mark Antony gives his love, Cleopatra, a little gift, 200,000 scrolls to add to the library's collection. Now, you don't give 200,000 books to a building that's a pile of smoldering ash, right? It just doesn't add up. So, what's our verdict on Caesar? Guilty of causing a terrible fire and a huge loss of knowledge? Absolutely. But was it the final fatal blow that destroyed the library forever? No way! The library survived. Okay, so if we can't pin the whole thing on Caesar, where does our investigation go next? Well, the plot thickens, because our next suspects are a whole lineup of later Roman emperors. You have to understand, for centuries after Caesar, Alexandria was just chaotic. In the 3rd century, Emperor Aurelian's army basically flattened the royal quarter, the exact part of the city where the main library was. A few decades later, Emperor Diocletian besieges the city and burns it down. And then there was the daughter library, a huge collection in a temple called the Serapeum. That got wrecked during intense religious riots. It wasn't one event, it was a series of brutal body blows. So, you see where this is going, right? It's not a simple murder mystery with a single killer. The real story is so much messier. And now it's time for the big reveal. The true culprit in the death of the Library of Alexandria. The library didn't go out with a bang. It was more like a long, slow, painful fade. You have its golden age, when it was the center of the universe. Then comes Roman instability, with fires and fighting chipping away at it. Then, maybe worst of all, comes imperial neglect. The funding gets cut, the top scholars stop coming. The institution itself just withered on the vine. So the real killer wasn't an invading army or a single fire. It was something way more mundane and way more tragic. It was budget cuts. It was changing political priorities. It was civil unrest. It was just apathy. It was death by 1,000 cuts over hundreds of years. So, what does that all mean? What did humanity actually lose when that last forgotten scroll finally turned to dust? And this is the really heartbreaking part. The honest answer is, we'll never truly know. There's a fancy Latin term for this, argumentum ad ignorantiam. It means an argument from ignorance. We literally can't know the full extent of what was lost, because the records of what was lost were also lost. We don't even have a definitive date for when the library officially closed its doors for good. It just faded away. Just try to imagine it. Complete histories of civilizations we know almost nothing about. Aristotle's famous second book on comedy. We know it existed, but it's just gone. Star charts so advanced, they wouldn't be matched for over 1,000 years. It's not just a lost library. It's a library of ghosts. It's a massive, gaping black hole in the story of us. And that brings us to a really chilling thought for our own time. If the greatest storehouse of knowledge in the ancient world, a place built of stone and meant to last forever, could just be forgotten and allowed to crumble into nothing, how permanent is our knowledge? How safe are our digital archives from simply fading away? So now I have to turn it over to you. What's your take on all this? Do you think one of our suspects is more guilty than the others? Was it the slow decline that really did it in? Drop your theory down in the comments. I really want to know what you think. Hey, thanks so much for digging into this massive mystery with me today. If you enjoyed this historical deep dive, do me a huge favor and hit that like button and subscribe to Historical Repo. We've got so many more of history's greatest puzzles to solve together.